The begging of the stars, 800 words. The galaxy was dying, across countless worlds. Fires burned, skies cracked, and cities fell. A great swarm was moving through the stars, a tide of destruction that nothing could stop. It was not an army, with leaders or kings. It was not a fleet with reason or mercy. It was hunger, endless hunger, and every planet it touched turned into ash and bone. The proud empires of the galaxy tried to stand. The golden fleets of the Eliari shattered in days. The steel legions of the Varun, broken in weeks. Even the silent machines of the Kyrics, who feared nothing, were torn apart and consumed. There was no escape, no hope, no salvation, so the people did the only thing left. They raised their voices to the stars, they prayed, they begged. Please, someone, anyone, save us. On every world, temples filled with weeping, children were carried to altars, leaders dropped to their knees, and even the most proud called out for help. Their words rose higher than any ship could fly. They begged the stars for mercy, but the stars did not answer. They did not shine brighter. They did not send guardians. Silence filled the heavens, silence that felt colder than the swarm itself. The people began to wonder, are the stars deaf to us, or do they simply not care? Despair grew. Many worlds stopped fighting, choosing to burn their own cities before the swarm could take them. Some turned against each other, desperate for food, desperate for safety, desperate to survive even one more day. And then, one voice, one desperate council of dying leaders remembered something. A planet far away, small, forgotten, barely known, a world blue and green, hidden at the edge of the spiral. They called it Earth. Most in the galaxy laughed at it. Long ago, it was said to be violent, wild, a place of chaos and war, a world where the people fought each other almost as much as they lived. It was a place not of wisdom or peace, but of struggle. But now, in this final hour, struggle was exactly what they needed. So the signal was sent. Not a call of alliance, not a treaty, not a negotiation. It was a scream across the stars, a scream of the broken, the dying, the hopeless. Earth, if you hear us, if you are out there, save us, we beg you. For days and weeks the galaxy waited. The swarm moved closer, systems fell, fleets burned, every passing moment felt like another nail in the coffin of all life. And then, something stirred. At first it was small, whispers across the comms, strange signatures detected at the edge of dying systems, unknown ships moving against the swarm. Alien eyes turned to the void and saw them. Not angels, not saviors, but shadows. The first ships of Earth arrived. They were not bright like the Eliari, not perfect like the Kyrics, not massive like the Varun. They were scarred, ugly, and sharp. Their hulls were covered in marks of battles long past. Their shapes were designed not for beauty, but for war. And when they moved like predators, silent, focused, deadly. The refugees who saw them trembled. "This is not mercy," they whispered. "These are monsters." But still, they were monsters who answered. The stars had stayed silent. But Earth had listened, and Earth had come. At first, the galaxy did not know whether to feel relief or fear. Who were these humans, these creatures? Of Earth, why had they come? Was it to save or to conquer what remained? The swarm had never been slowed, never been stopped. And yet, these humans spoke no words of peace, no words of surrender. They spoke only of war. One refugee child, hiding in a ruined station, asked a human soldier, "Will you give us mercy?" The soldier looked at the child, his eyes dark, his armor scratched, his hands steady. "No," he said. "Mercy is for the weak. We bring fire." And so the galaxy learned the truth. When they begged the stars for mercy, the stars gave them silence, but the Earth gave them monsters. Monsters who did not fear the swarm, monsters who were born for war. And for the first time in 1,000 battles, the swarm would bleed. The begging of the stars was over. The waiting was over. The galaxy had prayed for saviors. But what it received instead was far more dangerous, because when Earth answered, it did not come with mercy. It came with fury. The arrival of the monsters, 800 words. The first human ships slid out of the dark like predators leaving their den. They were not shining carriers of hope, not silver wings of salvation. They were armored beasts, covered in scars and dents, ugly to look at but terrifying to face. Where alien ships glowed with light and curved beauty, human ships were sharp, jagged, and brutal. They did not announce themselves with music or grand speeches. They arrived in silence, their engines growling low, like hunters stalking prey. The refugees on a dying station were the first to see them. Eyes wide, they pressed against cracked glass, watching the human fleet descend. Whispers spread through the crowd. "Are these the angels we begged for?" One asked, voice trembling. Another shook his head. No, no. Angels do not come with teeth. The humans did not look like saviors. They looked like monsters. But monsters who had chosen to come when no one else had. The swarm noticed them. 2 millions of creatures turned, black wings spreading through space like a storm of blades. They screamed without voices, a soundless wave of hunger. Every other empire had feared that sound. But the humans. They laughed. On the human comms, soldiers joked, their voices calm. "Look at that, dinner's running straight at us." Another replied, "Hope they taste better than the last swarm we burned." Their laughter chilled the aliens who listened. These humans sounded mad but also fearless. Then the first shot was fired. A human battleship unleashed a cannon blast that lit up the void. The swarm scattered, but not far enough. More human ships opened fire, launching swarms of missiles, beams of energy, and railguns that punched holes through thousands of creatures. Where alien fleets had always stood in rigid formation, humans fought like wolves, breaking apart, surrounding, striking from unexpected angles. Their ships looked disorganized, chaotic, but to the swarm, that chaos was death. From the refugee station, children clung to their mothers as the void became a storm of fire. One old alien priest whispered, "We prayed for mercy, but this is something else." The humans did not fight like defenders. They fought like predators. Every shot they fired was not a shield but a spear. Every movement was not retreat, but attack. They did not wait for the swarm to strike. They struck first over and over again. When the swarm slammed into the human fleet, it expected fear. Instead, it found fury. Boarding claws latched onto a human destroyer, tearing open its hull. The swarm poured inside, screaming and biting. But inside the corridors, human marines waited, armored and ready. They fought not with fear, but with fire and steel. Grenades lit the halls. Shotguns roared. Blades slashed. The swarm tore into flesh, but the humans did not fall back. They roared even louder, pushing forward. One human shouted as he crushed a creature beneath his boot. "You think you're monsters? You've never met Earth." Across the station, the aliens watched the battle. Some wept, some cheered, but all of them trembled. Never in their lives had they seen such a thing, to fight with such madness, such fire, such cruelty toward the enemy. It was not the mercy they had begged for. It was something darker and something stronger. After hours of fighting, the swarm began to break. The impossible had happened. The endless tide had been pushed back. Not destroyed, but wounded. The aliens on the station stared in disbelief. The swarm had never been slowed before, never been beaten back. Yet here stood the humans, their ships scarred, their soldiers bloody, but still standing, still grinning, still ready for more. The alien leaders argued in whispers. Are they here to save us or to claim what's left? They fight like devils, not heroes. They may be devils, one answered softly, but they are our devils now. A human commander finally spoke across the comms, his voice heavy, calm, and cold. To all survivors, stay where you are. We'll deal with the swarm. The words were not gentle, not filled with warmth, but to the refugees they were enough. For the first time, someone was not running. Someone was not begging. For the first time, someone was fighting back, and in that moment, the galaxy realized the truth. The stars had ignored their prayers, but Earth had answered, and Earth's monsters had come, not with mercy, not with kindness, but with fury and war. And for the first time, the swarm screamed not in hunger, but in fear. Fear and awe. 800 words. The battle was over, but the silence that followed was heavier than the roar of war. Alien eyes stared at the human fleet as it drifted above the broken remains of the swarm, ships scarred, hulls glowing red from heat, weapons still humming. The humans had won the first clash, but what shocked the galaxy most was not the victory itself. It was how they fought. Not with mercy, not with hesitation, but with fury, with madness, with joy. On the refugee station, survivors whispered among themselves. "They laugh while they fight," said one alien, trembling. "They bleed and keep charging," said another, voice shaking. A mother held her child close, whispering, "These are not angels. These are monsters." But her child, eyes wide with wonder, whispered back, "Maybe monsters are what we need." The swarm had never known fear. It had only known hunger. But when it faced humans, something inside it recoiled. For the first time in endless centuries, the swarm retreated, leaving behind its dead. It was not mercy that pushed it back, it was fire. And the galaxy, broken and desperate, looked at the humans with awe and terror mixed together. On the human flagship, soldiers gathered in their mess hall, armor dented, faces smeared with blood and ash. They laughed, they sang, some raised drinks. To them, this was not horror, it was victory. "Did you see their faces?" one soldier said, grinning. "Those bugs didn't know what hit them." Another slammed his fist on the table. "We'll burn every last one of them. We'll show the galaxy what Earth does to monsters." The aliens listening through comms did not understand. How could anyone find joy in such slaughter? But humans were different. Forged in fire, sharpened by endless wars on their own world, violence was not their end. It was their beginning. A delegation of alien leaders was allowed onto the human flagship. They walked through dark corridors lined with heavy steel. Not golden halls, not polished marble, but bare metal that smelled of oil and smoke. Every step echoed with the weight of war. When they entered the command chamber, they froze. At its center stood a human commander. Broad-shouldered, scarred, eyes cold as stone. He did not bow. He did not smile. He simply said, "You called," and we answered. The Eliari speaker, her voice soft but trembling, asked, "Why? Why come for us? No one else did." The commander stared at her for a long moment before replying, "Because we know what it means to be hunted, because we've lived it since the dawn of our world. Because where others beg for mercy, we fight." His words were not poetic, not kind, but they carried weight like iron. The aliens felt it deep in their bones. This was not mercy, this was survival, and humans were survival made flesh. Back on the refugee station, survivors began to talk. Some said the humans would save them, others said the humans would rule them. One alien priest whispered, "We begged the stars for gods, and instead we found demons." But another replied, "If demons can kill the swarm, then let the demons reign." Among the human soldiers, there was no confusion. They knew what they were. They called themselves monsters without shame. One Marine, cleaning blood off his armor, said to a frightened alien child, "You think we're scary now? Wait until you see us angry." The child's eyes widened, fear mixed with strange admiration. Humans terrified the galaxy. But at the same time, they gave it something no one else had: hope. When the swarm regrouped at the edge of the system, it did not rush forward as it always had. It lingered. It hesitated, as if weighing the risk. That hesitation was everything. If the swarm could fear, if it could hesitate, then maybe it could be defeated, and that single truth spread faster than any signal. Across shattered worlds, whispers rose. The swarm bleeds, the swarm fears, the swarm can be stopped. And every whisper carried the same name: humanity. Yet with awe came dread. What if the humans turned their fury on the survivors themselves? What if the monsters they had called for became the monsters they could not escape? The galaxy did not know the answer, but for now, they chose to believe, because fear of humans was still better than extinction under the swarm. On the bridge of the flagship, the commander stood looking out into the void. Beside him, An alien envoy asked quietly, "Do you fight for us or for yourselves?" The commander did not look away from the stars as he answered, "We fight because that's what humans do. We fight because no one else can, and we fight because if the swarm wins, then one day it will come for Earth." The envoy nodded slowly, realizing the truth. The humans were not saviors. They were not here to protect the galaxy. They were here to win, no matter the cost, and maybe, just maybe, that was enough. The galaxy had begged for mercy, and none came. Now they looked upon monsters wrapped in steel and fury, and though fear filled their hearts, awe grew beside it. For the first time, the endless swarm was no longer unstoppable. For the first time, there was a chance, and that chance had a name: human. The first clash, 800 words. The swarm came like a storm of black wings. From the edge of the system it poured, endless and hungry, blotting out the stars. Other races had seen this sight before, and every time it ended the same way. Planets burned, fleets shattered, people screamed until silence swallowed them. But this time, something different waited. This time, Earth stood in their path. The human fleet did not retreat, did not hide, did not beg. They moved forward, engines roaring, like thunder. Their ships spread out not in elegant formations but like wolves circling prey. To alien eyes it looked reckless, chaotic, insane. But to the humans, it was instinct. This was how they hunted. "Contact in 30 seconds, a voice growled. Across the comms, inside a human battleship, Marines tightened their armor, weapons clutched in blood-stained hands. They were smiling, laughing even. One soldier patted his rifle and said, "Time to go bug hunting." Another licked his lips like a predator before the kill. Aliens watching the transmission shivered. These humans were not afraid. They were eager. It was madness, but it was also power. The swarm struck first. A wave of claws and wings slammed into the human line, tearing at armor plates, spitting acid, trying to overwhelm through numbers. Against any other fleet, it would have worked. But the humans did not break. They fired back with everything they had. Railguns punched holes straight through clusters of swarm beasts. Missiles turned groups of them into burning clouds of ash. Laser fire carved the darkness into rivers of light. The void became a furnace. On the refugee station, survivors watched the battle unfold. The void itself shook with violence. Children pressed against glass, seeing explosions ripple across space like falling suns. Priests fell silent, too stunned to pray. No one had ever seen anyone fight the swarm like this. Not with shields, not with mercy, but with rage. One human destroyer was boarded, swarm beasts pouring through torn metal. Inside, the corridors became a slaughterhouse. Marines stood shoulder to shoulder, shotguns and flamethrowers roaring. The swarm clawed and bit, tearing into flesh. But the humans did not fall back. They roared, they cursed, they laughed as they killed. Blood ran down the walls, smoke filled the air. One Marine, covered in burns, screamed as he charged forward with a blade in his hand, cutting down 3 beasts before he fell. His last words echoed through the comms. "Earth doesn't kneel." In the command chambers of the refugee station, alien leaders watched the chaos with wide eyes. "They are mad," one whispered. "No," another replied, trembling. "They are human." For the first time, the swarm's endless advance slowed. Every minute the humans fought. More of the swarm fell. For the first time, the swarm screamed not in hunger but in confusion. The human fleet pushed harder. Frigates dove into the thickest parts of the swarm, breaking it apart with suicidal fury. Bombers raced through enemy clusters, dropping payloads that split the void in fire. And above it all, the flagship gave a single order: "Do not stop. Do not retreat. Kill them all." Hours passed and still the humans fought. Aliens watching could not understand how they kept going. Other species tired. Other soldiers broke. But humans seemed to grow stronger the longer they bled. Their fury was endless, their will unshakable. It was as if pain only sharpened them, as if loss only fueled them. Finally, the swarm began to falter. The endless tide, always so sure of victory, broke into smaller waves. Some tried to retreat, others hesitated. And in that hesitation, the humans struck with even greater fury, hunters chasing prey, predators smelling weakness. Every blast of human fire carried the same message: there would be no mercy. When the last of the swarm fled into the dark, silence fell again. Wreckage drifted across the void, broken bodies of monsters and shattered steel. Human ships floated, burning but alive on the station. Refugees wept and cheered, unable to believe what they had just seen. The swarm had been stopped, if only for a moment, something no empire, no army, no god had ever achieved. And the ones who did it were not angels. They were monsters from Earth. In the quiet aftermath, an alien envoy approached a human marine, his armor still smoking, his hands red with blood. "You do not fight like us," the envoy whispered, voice filled with awe and dread. The marine looked at him, eyes dark, smile sharp. "That's because we're not like you," he said. "We're human, and when the stars turn cold, when mercy fails, when monsters come, that's when we rise." The envoy shivered, unable to decide if it was hope or terror he felt. But one truth burned clear in his heart. The galaxy had begged the stars for mercy. The stars gave them nothing, but Earth gave them something far more terrifying. And in the ashes of the first clash, the galaxy realized, maybe that was exactly what they needed. Mercy replaced by fire, 800 words. The battlefield was silent, but the silence did not feel like peace. It felt like smoke before the storm. Alien refugees stared at the broken remains of the swarm, their hearts trembling. They had begged for mercy. They had prayed for gentle saviors. But what came instead was fire, and fire did not comfort, it consumed. The humans walked among the ruins of their own ships, armor dented, faces scarred. They carried their wounded, they buried their dead. Yet, even in grief, their eyes burned with something the aliens did not understand. Not sorrow, not despair, but resolve. To humans, death was not an ending. It was fuel. Every name lost became a reason to fight harder, to strike deeper, to burn brighter. On the refugee station, alien leaders gathered, desperate for answers. One Eliari priest asked in a broken voice, "Do you not know mercy? Do you not offer peace?" A human officer turned his scarred face toward her, his voice steady, cold. "Mercy?" he repeated. "You begged the stars for mercy, and the stars ignored you. Now you beg us, but we do not give mercy. We give survival, and survival is bought with fire." The words spread through the survivors like a storm. They were not what the people wanted to hear, but they were the truth. Humans did not come to forgive the swarm. They came to end it. To them, mercy was not sparing the enemy. It was destroying the enemy so no one else would suffer. The swarm was not finished. It regrouped beyond the stars. Billions more waited, endless as the tide. But now it hesitated. It had tasted human fury, and for the first time it had learned fear. The galaxy clung to this single hope. If humans could make the swarm bleed once, perhaps they could do it again. Perhaps fire could succeed where mercy had always failed. In the human war rooms, plans were drawn not to defend but to attack. Maps of enemy-infested systems glowed on cold steel walls. Commanders argued. Soldiers sharpened blades. Engineers loaded bombs. No one spoke of retreat. No one spoke of surrender. One commander growled, "We don't wait for monsters to come to us. We go to them." And the others agreed. This was not a war of holding the line. This was a hunt. To the aliens, it seemed madness. They had always fought to delay the swarm, to save at least one more world before falling. But the humans fought. For something different, they fought to win, even if it meant burning half the stars to ash. An alien child asked a human marine, "Will you save us?" The marine knelt down, his armor covered in soot, his eyes heavy with fire. "We won't save you," he said softly. "We'll make sure the monsters can't hurt you again." It was not the answer the child expected, but it was the answer humanity always gave. When the humans struck the swarm again, the galaxy watched in awe and terror. They did not wait for the creatures to descend. They entered infested systems with fury, their ships cutting through the void like knives through flesh. They burned nests from orbit, leveled entire moons crawling with beasts. Where the swarm spread like infection, the humans spread like fire. And fire does not ask, it does not forgive, it simply consumes. Whole planets turned red under human bombardment. Alien refugees gasped as they saw the destruction. "Is this mercy?" One whispered, horrified. Another answered, "No, this is war." But deep inside a new thought grew. Perhaps this was the only way. Perhaps peace could never come until the swarm was gone. Perhaps mercy had to be replaced with fire. The swarm struck back with rage, but every time it did, the humans grew fiercer. Every death was repaid with 100 kills. Every lost ship became the spark for a new victory. To fight humans was to face creatures who never accepted defeat. The swarm could not understand it. The galaxy could barely believe it, but this truth became clear. Mercy was weakness. Fire was survival. In the refugee halls, survivors spoke with new voices. They no longer prayed for gods or begged the stars. They whispered the names of humans instead. Fear and hope mixed together. They were terrified of the monsters from Earth, but they were even more terrified of a galaxy without them. On the bridge of the flagship, the human commander looked out at a burning swarm world. A young alien envoy beside him whispered, "You could have spared it." The commander's voice was iron. "No. If we leave even one spark alive, it will grow again, and mercy will only cost us more lives. This is the only way." The envoy closed his eyes, shivering. He wanted to hate them, but he could not, because in the fire he saw hope. Hope that the swarm could be ended. Hope that the galaxy might live. And so the truth spread like wildfire. The galaxy had begged the stars for mercy, but mercy had failed them again and again. Now Earth had come, and Earth gave them something different. Not mercy, but fire. And in that fire, the galaxy found a chance. The truth of humanity, 800 words. The fires of battle dimmed, but questions remained. The galaxy looked at Earth's soldiers with awe and dread. They had seen the humans fight, they had seen the swarm bleed. But one question echoed in every alien heart. Why are they like this? Why do they fight with such madness, such fury, such endless will on the refugee station? Survivors gathered near human soldiers, curious and fearful. Children stared at their scarred armor, their tired but steady eyes. Priests whispered prayers in corners, hoping the humans were not demons in disguise. Leaders gathered in council, with human commanders searching for answers. At last, one alien elder asked what all feared to ask. "What are you really, humans? Why do you fight this way?" The human commander said nothing at first, his gaze heavy, his hands folded like stone. Then he finally spoke, voice steady and dark. "You asked the stars for mercy, but the stars are silent. You want to know the truth of humanity? Then, listen." He told them of Earth, of storms that destroyed villages, of mountains that froze men to death, of deserts that baked armies alive, of predators that hunted humans even as humans hunted them. He spoke of endless wars, of empires rising and falling, of nations burning each other. He told them of plagues, famines, disasters that broke weaker species. But through it all, humanity endured. Not because the world was kind, but because it was cruel. Not because they were spared, but because they refused to die. On Earth, the commander said, mercy was rare. Survival was everything. We learned to fight long before we learned to fly. And when we finally looked to the stars, we carried that truth with us. We do not beg for safety. We make it with fire. The aliens listened, silent and trembling. They began to understand why humans laughed in the face of the swarm, why they charged even as they bled, why they never stopped, never yielded, never broke. It was not madness, it was history. It was not cruelty, it was survival. One alien scholar whispered, "You are monsters made by your own world." A marine nearby heard him and smiled, showing bloodied teeth. "Not monsters. he said. Just human. But when monsters come for us, we know how to answer. Among the refugees, rumors spread. Quickly, some said humans were cursed, forged by a violent planet doomed to bring war wherever they went. Others said they were chosen, shaped by fire so they could fight when no one else could. Fear and hope twisted together in every whisper, but one truth became clear to all. Humans were not saviors. They were not gods. They were not demons. They were survivors, and survival made them strong. On the edge of the system, the swarm gathered. Again, billions waiting, watching, learning. But even it hesitated for the first time in its endless hunger. The swarm recognized a rival. Not prey, not weaklings, but predators. And predators are dangerous. In human camps, soldiers sat beside. Alien refugees, they shared food, patched wounds, repaired broken walls. Children listened to human stories, tales of explorers, rebels, and warriors. They heard of ancient Earth wars, of men and women who stood against impossible odds. The stories were brutal, filled with loss, but always ending the same way. Humans fought, humans bled, and humans endured. The children whispered to each other, "If they survived their world, maybe they can save ours." An alien healer asked a human medic, "Why do you risk your lives for strangers? Why come for us when no one else would?" The medic looked tired, but her eyes were firm. "Because we know what it's like to be alone. We know what it's like when no one comes. We swore we'd never let that happen again. Not if we can stop it." Her words spread like fire among the refugees, and for the first time they saw something beyond fear in the humans. They saw loyalty fierce and unshakable. In the great halls of council, alien leaders debated. Some argued humans were too dangerous, that one day they would turn their fire on the galaxy itself. Others argued that without humans there would be no galaxy left to fear them. But in every chamber, in every voice, the same truth was admitted. The galaxy had prayed for mercy, but mercy had always failed. Now humanity stood before them, and with them came not mercy but survival. The commander's words echoed long after he left. "We are not the mercy you prayed for. We are the fire you need. When monsters come, we do not run. We burn them until nothing is left. That is the truth of humanity." And as the swarm prepared to strike again, the galaxy no longer begged the stars. It looked to the monsters of Earth, monsters who were not monsters at all, but humans. And in their fire, the galaxy saw its last chance. The end of begging, 800 words. The swarm returned, darker and larger than before. It stretched across the stars like a shadow without end, a tide of wings and claws. Every other empire would have fallen to its weight. Every world would have burned. But this time, the galaxy did not beg the stars. This time, they turned their eyes to Earth. The human fleet gathered, scarred and battered but unbroken. Engines growled like thunder. Weapons hummed like storms. Soldiers stood ready in steel corridors, their eyes cold, their hands steady. They were not afraid, they were waiting for them. War was not disaster, it was destiny. The swarm screamed forward, a wall of death. But the humans did not retreat, they charged. Their ships tore into the black tide, firing railguns, missiles, and beams, until the void itself glowed. Alien refugees watched in awe as the sky turned into fire. Where every other fleet had tried to block the swarm, the humans tore holes through it. Where every empire had fought for survival, the humans fought for victory. In the corridors of a human destroyer, Marines clashed with the creatures, the air filled with smoke, screams, and the roar of flamethrowers. The swarm bit, tore, ripped flesh from bone. But the humans did not fall. Back every death was answered with 10 kills. Every scream with a roar, blood poured, but still they advanced. One Marine, missing an arm, laughed as he charged into the swarm with a grenade. The explosion shook the ship and the swarm screamed. Even in death, the humans refused to kneel. On the command deck of the flagship, the human commander gave the order, "Push them, burn them, break them, no mercy." The fleet responded with fury, diving deeper into the heart of the swarm. Aliens watching from hidden stations whispered in fear, "They do not fight like soldiers, they fight like demons." But another voice answered softly, "No, they Fight like humans. For hours the battle raged. The swarm poured forward, but every wave was broken, every cluster shattered. Human ships burned, but none retreated. Every scar on their hull was a promise that they would not stop, until the last monster was ash. At last the swarm began to falter. The endless tide thinned. Screams turned to silence. Wings turned to drifting corpses. The galaxy held its breath as the impossible unfolded. The swarm retreated, fleeing into the dark. For the first time in living memory, the swarm did not devour, it fled. And behind them only Earth's fire remained. On the refugee station, silence fell. Aliens wept, some falling to their knees, not in prayer but in disbelief. They had begged the stars, but the stars had never answered. They had begged for mercy, but mercy had only brought death. Now Earth had come, and Earth had given them something greater than mercy. It had given them victory. Children ran through the halls shouting the word, human, like a blessing. Priests tore down broken idols, whispering instead the names of human heroes. Leaders bowed their heads not out of fear but respect. The galaxy, once proud and divided, now spoke with one voice. When you beg the stars, pray that Earth answers. In the quiet aftermath, an alien envoy approached the human commander. His voice trembled as he asked, "Why? Why give us this victory when others would have left us to die?" The commander looked at him, his face scarred, his eyes heavy. "Because that's who we are," he said. "We are not gods. We are not angels. We are not demons. We are human. When monsters come, we don't kneel. We fight. And when we fight, we win." The envoy bowed his head, his voice shaking. "Then humanity is the mercy we prayed for." But the commander shook his head. "No, we are not mercy. Mercy is weakness. Mercy is surrender. What we give is fire, and fire will keep you alive." And so the truth spread across the stars. The galaxy had begged for mercy, but mercy had failed. Now they had found something better. They had found Earth. They had found monsters who were not monsters at all. They had found humans. From that day forward, when children looked to the stars, they did not pray for gods. They prayed for the roar of engines, for the flash of railguns, for the fire of Earth. They prayed that if darkness came again, it would be answered not by silence, but by the monsters of humanity. And every voice whispered the same truth. The age of begging was over. The age of humanity had begun.